All right, so this is the with calculator evens review. Again, if you're watching on video, you found it, and you know that there are 3 other videos with the odds calculator, the evens no calculator, and the odds no calculator. They're all there. You can find them all if you need to see them. All right, number 27. Find the discriminant of each quadratic equation and then state the number and type of each solution. Discriminant. What's the discriminant? Do you remember? It's the under the radical stuff. So I usually don't memorize it separately. I just know that it's the part under the radical. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again, the discriminant is not the radical, but the under the radical part. So b squared minus 4ac is what we're trying to find. And if you memorize it as part of the quadratic formula, then it helps you also know about number and type of solutions because you're taking the square root of the discriminant. So if it's positive, if it's 0, if it's negative, those have different outcomes. So 4x squared plus 8x plus 4 equals 0. It's got to be equal to 0. You've got to move everything to one side. And I would put things in order. There's a few people that didn't put things in order, and they end up messing up who's A, B, and C when they do that. What I mean by that is if they move that 8x over and write it as 4x squared plus 4 plus 8x equals 0, like that's still true, but it's a little bit confusing or misleading because now A, B, and C are kind of out of order. So you can do it, but it's probably safer to put things in order. Then it's easy to pick off who A, B, and C are. So b squared minus 4ac. Oh yeah, this is the calculator part of the test, so no messing up on the calculation stuff or computation stuff. 8 squared minus 4 times 4 times 4 is 0. So what does that mean? And again, think back to the quadratic formula. If you got plus or minus 0, how many answers are you going to have? You're going to have one real solution. Because plus and minus 0 doesn't really do anything. It's the same number. Just because we're not doing all of them, what happens if you get a positive number for your discriminant?
2 real solutions.
That would be 2 real solutions because you'd have plus or minus the square root of something. Zero gets you 1 real. That's the example we just did. And what happens if the discriminant is negative? Plus or minus the square root of a negative number? You get 2 complex solutions. Complex just meaning there's an I involved. The hope is you don't have to memorize this table. The hope is you understand what's going on. You know what the discriminant is, and that way you can figure out what it means when you figure out what the discriminant is.
Is that 2 imaginary, 2 complex?
I would accept either one. So we didn't talk about this very much, but A plus BI. A is a real number. BI is a imaginary number. And A plus BI is a complex number because it has part real and part imaginary. Now, if you just told me that a negative leads to 2 imaginary solutions, I'd be okay with that. But the technical right way to say that is 2 complex solutions. Yeah. Jeremy?
When we're solving a quadratic and it's negative, do we have to find the complex ones or put them in?
Okay, that's a great question. The question was if we're solving them and we get to the point where we're taking the square root of a negative, are we allowed to stop? and just say that doesn't work. It depends, which is a frustrating answer. Generally speaking, solve it all the way out. The maybe two exceptions would be, we'll hit one here in a minute with 32. That's a system of equations. So in a system of equations, we're looking for where they intersect. And if the picture looks like that, and I don't know that it does for 32, but just in general, if the picture looks like that, where do they intersect? Nowhere. And in an equation, that would look like a plus or minus I square root of something. So if you hit I on a system, you would say no real solutions. The other time would be if you're doing a word problem, and you want the length of a box or something, or what time did the ball hit the whatever. You can't have an imaginary length or time. So usually, yes, give the answer unless it really doesn't make sense for that particular problem. If it's graphing, you could say no real answers, because if it's graphing, you'd be looking for like an x-intercept. You can't have an x-intercept. It's an imaginary x-intercept. That's a really good question of when are you allowed to like throw your hands up and be like, nah, it doesn't work. Word problems in graphing, I guess, would be the answers to that. Number 30. Solve each equation with the quadratic formula. Again, with the 12p, I'm going to put it in the right, not the right spot. I'm going to put it in the better spot so that I know what A, B, and C are. There's not a right spot, but there's a better spot. This is just an equation. There's no word problem attached to it. It's not a graphing situation. So even if an imaginary shows up, I'll just deal with it. P equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Well, even though you have a calculator, it's probably wise to do the discriminant first, because then you'll know what kind of answers we're headed toward. Although I can tell that right away, because that's going to be 144 plus something. So I know I'm going to get two real answers. 4 times 5 times 12 plus 144 is 384. I don't know what 384 is divisible by. Is it divisible by 64? I was just going to go by 4. But it is divisible by 64. Which is good. That makes life a little easier. If you had only done 4, then you would have to realize that 96 is also divisible by 4. And then you'd have to keep going. So 64 is the way to go. 4 into 96 is 16. Nope, is 24. And then another 4. So under the radical, you'd have 4 times 4 times 4. Whoops. Times 6. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Which is why Noah finding 64 is a much better choice. 8 square root of 6 over 10. You okay with that? I kind of breezed through that. Like 64 is the way to go, but I don't know how many people are going to find 64 first.
No, I just because I got
Oh, not done yet.
No, I know, but like further like discriminant.
Uh-oh. 144 plus...
I think I just didn't do negative, so.
Okay, obviously that would be it.
I was getting 144 minus 240 instead of what?
Yes, and it should be 144 minus negative 240. What's left to do here? What do I need to do with this? Simplify by 2. So negative 6 plus or minus 4 root 6 over 5. How many answers is that? 2. Yeah, it's one statement, but it's 2 answers there. All right, 32. Solve each system of equations. So this is where I'm thinking about where do these things intersect. I might get no answers. I might get one answer. I might get 2 answers, depending on where the parabolas and lines go. Which variable would you like to solve for in this one? I agree, because then you don't have to square anything. So let's solve for y in the second equation. So y equals 4 minus x. That means 4 minus x goes in for y in the first equation. X squared plus x minus 2 times y. 4 minus x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, x squared plus x. Careful with the minus 2. Make sure it distributes. So x squared plus x minus 8 plus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Notice I'm not skipping many steps here. I'm just taking it slow and steady rather than trying to do too many things at once. X squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Oh, that's kind. That'll factor for us. Giant?
I know this is not listed with this one, but for number 30, negative 6 over 5 plus or minus 4 radical 6 over 5 do the same thing.
Yep. If you split it up, that's okay. Yeah, I would just say be careful if you split it up, then you might have to further simplify, right? If they will simplify individually then. Okay, back to 32. That will definitely factor with 4 and 1. Just need a plus 4 and a minus 1. So x equals negative 4 and x equals 1. All right, let's solve for x. Why am I not done with this problem? I don't have y, so I need to find y. Because we use substitution, we should have an equation for y up there somewhere. So 4 minus negative 4, that would be 8. And again, we want to list these as an ordered pair because we're looking for the intersection. That also ties together the x and the y. If you just have x equals and x equals and y equals and y equals sitting out there, I don't know who pairs with who. So 2 solutions, but that makes sense. We know that can happen. That would look like, I don't know what the parabola or line looks like, but I definitely know that 2 solutions is certainly a possibility. $34. Oh, another one. What would you like to solve for in this one? Definitely y, because then we don't have to square anything. So I'm going to move the y to this side and get x plus 1. Y equals x plus 1. So in place of y goes x plus 1. Negative x squared plus 3x plus x plus 1 plus 44 equals 0. So negative x squared plus 4x plus 45 equals 0. Some people don't mind factoring with the lead coefficient of negative. Like, you can still do it. I just find it annoying and hard to mess with. So I'm going to multiply through by negative 1. And in my mind, that makes an easier factoring problem. Because then I don't have to worry about a negative x. I just x and x. And what do you know? 9 and 5. 9 times 5 is 45. Different signs with the 9 negative. So x equals 9, x equals negative 5. Just be careful. It's tempting. Students will stop there. and they haven't done anything wrong, and I get it, they've done a whole lot of work, they got an x equals, like, got a good answer, move on to the next one. Except that we're looking for x and y. So y equals x plus 1, 9 plus 1 would be 10, and negative 5 plus 1 would be negative 4. And again, I want them as an ordered pair, so I know who goes with who. 9 comma 10, negative 5, negative 4. Another 2 answer problem. I think 31 and 33, I think one of those is one answer and one of those is no answers. But you could check the key to be sure. Alright, some word problems. 36. A 5-inch by 7-inch photograph. Alright, it's kind of nice when they just start out with dimensions, so I know what my picture looks like. Is surrounded by a frame of uniform width. Okay, uniform width meaning it's x wide all the way around. The area of the frame equals the area of the photograph. Oh, well that's 35. I'm good with that. So something equals 35 because that's the inside area. But now I need to come up with some expression for all that area. It's another one of those composite shapes, fancy word for it in geometry, where you find the whole area and then subtract off the missing pieces. So area of the big rectangle minus the area of the little rectangle. So the big rectangle, the outer dimensions. Okay, that's where I need to be careful. How long is that side? We did one kind of like this. So it's got an extra x on each end. So 7 plus 2x or 2x plus 7, either way. And then the same kind of thing for the width. The inside width is 5, but we add a little x on one side and an x on the other side. So 2x plus 5. And then we already know the inside area is 35. So 4x squared plus 10x plus 14x plus 35. We got 35s all over this problem. So 4x squared plus 24x. Keep track of all my 35s. Those two 35s will cancel out. And then I can subtract over that 35 equals 0. Yes, sir.
Wait, what's x to length of them?
Say that again?
What's the x? If 2x plus 7 is like the length of the other side,
Uh-huh.
what's x to length of?
What is x the length of?
Yeah, like which?
X is the width of the frame.
Oh. Like the whole frame?
The whole, the frame, the outside. No, sorry. X is this width right here. This is the width of the frame. So you have a frame and a picture and then an outside dimension, but the outside dimension is the outer dimensions of the frame. We have to be careful. We want the width of the frame when we get done here, so that's not going to be x. Got a calculator, but hopefully this factors. Maybe. And I got choices on both ends. That makes it kind of annoying. But surely it's 5 and 7. Right? Surely? Maybe? Let's see. Am I going to have to quadratic formula this thing? 2 times, let's see, they have to be different signs. So 2 times 7 is 14, that's not going to do it. 4 times 7 is 28. But 28 minus 5 is not 24. 35 is not going to get it done, that's too big. Dang it. If it doesn't factor, what do I have to do? Quadratic. Although I've got a calculator, so it's not the end of the world. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac, careful with the negative, Jenna, all over 2a. It's the unknown part to that song. Careful with the negatives. Again, I do want to do the discriminant first because that'll tell me what, what's going on here. 24 squared minus 4 times negative 35. So that's a positive 1136 all over 8. Well, I got a calculator, so how many answers is that? 2, so I need to find both answers, although I'm suspicious. It doesn't feel like there should be 2 widths that work here. But let's find them both and see if we can make sense of them. So I'm going to go with the fraction bar. Negative 24 plus square root 1136, all divided by 8. 3 decimals, always 3 decimals. 1.213 inches. And then for the other one, by the way, I hope most of you are doing this. I hope you're punching things into the calculator as we're doing this, because every year someone on the calculator test day is going to come and ask me, where do I find the whatever button? And I'm going to say, it's in the same place it was when you did it during class. And that's not going to help you, and I know it's not going to help you, but that's why I phrase it that way. So work them now, so you know where the stuff is. Alright, change the little plus to a minus, rather than typing it all in again. Negative. What does that mean in terms of the picture? Or what do I do with that answer? Jahid?
I think I crashed my calculator.
Okay. What do I do with the negative 7 though? What's that?
Get rid of it.
Just get rid of it, right? I can't have a width of the frame of negative 7. That doesn't goes into the picture. I don't know what that means. That's out. I caught this earlier. Kind of surprised I caught it, honestly, first time through. X equals 1.213 is not the answer to the question. What's the width of the frame? Yeah, the width is 2x plus 5. So 2 times width plus 5. So the width of the frame is 7.426 inches. Giant, did you uncrash your calculator back there? Okay.
Could you type into the calculator how to make a fraction?
Yeah. The fraction bar thing? Yeah, super helpful, the fraction bar thing, because then you don't have to worry about parentheses as much. It's alpha F1, or alpha Y equals. And then you have various, those are all fraction-related things, but the first one is the one we use most often, just numerator over denominator, and that sets up the fraction. And if you want to attempt to crash your calculator, you can see how many numerator and denominators you can stick in one, and you get this super compound fraction. It turns into a Christmas tree looking thing. Oh, I think it hit the limit. There we go. $38. football problem. When a football is punted, it goes up into the air. Yep, that's how punts work. Reaches a maximum altitude and then comes back down. Yep. I don't know if that was all necessary, but just in case, find a quadratic model for this situation. Let t be the number of seconds and d be the feet the ball is above the ground. Round to the nearest thousandth if necessary. When the ball was kicked, it was 4 feet above the ground. So that's kind of a tricky one. Like, what was the time when it was kicked? 0. So it didn't come out and say it, but it gave you enough there. When the ball was kicked, time equals 0. 1 second later, it was 28 feet above the ground, and 2 seconds later, it was 20 feet above the ground. So it's already peaked and it's started coming back down here. Write the expression d in terms of t. Okay, so this is where I want to fit a quadratic to my data. So I got to know what button to push. What's the most important button, or the most important thing to remember? Like, which button do I push? Stat. If you can remember stat, you can probably figure out the rest. So hit stat, and then you get all these options where you're like, oh yeah, edit. I need to edit a list. I need to put a list in there. And there's some points already in there from something, but that's all right. 4, 28, 20. Please, please, please make sure those numbers are correct. Because if you do the rest of the problem, but you put those numbers in wrong, you're going to get the wrong equation, and then every question after that's going to be wrong. So try not to rush putting those in. Do a double take to make sure that they're correct. Okay, so stat edit puts the table in there. What do I want to do next? I know it's stat. You remember what we're looking for next? I mean, even if you don't remember, you look at your options, you're like, I don't need to sort. I don't need to clear. I don't need to set up an editor. I don't even know what that means. I do need to do some calculations here. And then what are we trying to do? Why are we doing this problem? We're doing a quadratic regression. Quad reg. And it defaults correctly if you set up the table correctly. So the X list is L1, the Y list is L2. I don't need a frequency listing. Remember, you can be fancy and store the equation. Like, this problem has more questions to come, so it might save me a little time if I'd store that equation into Y1. So this is not required, but if you want to store the equation, then you got to go vars and go find Y1. Vars, yvars, function, Y1. And then you hit calculate, and it will tell you what A, B, and C are. And so I guess you could write it down because it does ask. Write the equation. So of D in terms of T. Okay, so D equals negative 16T squared plus 40T plus 4. And that equation should be stored in Y1 because I told my calculator to go put that equation in Y1, and there it is. Sometimes your calculator can't quite get the number perfect, and so you end up with 15.99999999999, and that's fine because that's close enough to 16. So don't be alarmed if it happens. You can change it to 16 if it makes you feel better. But if you're off by, the 8th, 9th, 10th decimal place, close enough. Noah?
After I made my calculus, I press calc, it sends me to like intersect or like minimum maximum.
Yeah. So you did second calc rather than stat calc. Stat calc. If you go, so I think if I heard you correctly, if you do this calc, if you do second calc, then you get that stuff. That's if you're looking at a graph, like that's helpful stuff, but that's not what I want right now. You still want to do stat calculations. So press the stat button first, and then scroll over to calculus, or calculations, and then grab quadratic regression.
Okay.
So that is a little bit confusing, because there are two calc menus, but one is for the graph and one is for stats. Giant?
So if we're doing like a multi-part like question and it has like crazy decimals, like when we're going over to the next part and we have like a crazy decimal, do you just want us to round it to the nearest thousand?
Yes. Although usually if you do it correctly, you don't have to round anything. You can keep it in the calculator and let the calculator tell you, accurate to 8 or 9, but then round it to 3. The rule in the AP test is the last digit has to be correct, either rounded or truncated. So you do have to be careful. If you round it and then you do 5 other things with that number, sort of what you're getting at, that last decimal might not be right anymore. So you do want to keep up with the exact value. But if you do it correctly, you like the calculator will keep up with it. Part B, find the coordinates of the vertex and tell what that represents in the real world. Well, maybe I should graph it and see what it looks like here. I think I had last graphed number 39, which was a rocket going into the air, so 39 goes way higher than 38. So I need to change my window. Yes, I don't need to go to 600. No one punts the ball 600 feet in the air. The highest point I have is 28, but it might go higher than that. I doubt it goes up to 50. I doubt it's in the air for 15 seconds. So I'm going to go -1 to 5 for my time, -10 to 50 for the y. That's always a guess and check. Like if that doesn't work, then I go back and pick something else. All right, I'd say that's good enough. I see what I want to see there. Find the coordinates of the vertex. Okay, there's 2 ways to find the coordinates of the vertex. There's the algebra way, which is -b over 2a. But we have a calculator. Noah, when you go to second calc, one of the options, which one of those options would help us find the vertex on this problem? The maximum. So you can let the calculator do the work. Left bound, get to the left. Right bound, get to the right. Guess, just put it in there in the middle somewhere. 1.245. There's a good example of the calculator. 1.245. And y equals 29. Okay, that's the coordinates of the vertex, but now I need to tell what that means.
Would it be okay to leave the vertex like with a decimal, or do you like want it?
No, if it's a calculator test, a fraction or decimal answer is okay.
On everything, or unless it asks for like a specific.
Yeah, unless it specifically says. It wouldn't be wrong though if you left it as whatever 40 over 32 reduces to.
Isn't it 5/4?
Yeah, it is 5/4. Oh, that's 1.25. That is definitely 5/4. But the second part of this question is, what does that mean? So what is 1.25 in the real world? Like what? That's the time. Time when? Or time of what? I mean, it's the time of the vertex, but like, what's the vertex in the real world? maybe we should answer 29 first. What's 29? That's the maximum height. And so 1.25 is the time of the maximum height. But the point of that question is to make sure you understand that one of those variables is time and one of those is height. You don't just say that's the maximum height and just kind of point to that ordered pair. 29 is the maximum height. It happens at 1.25 seconds. All right, find the t-intercepts and tell what each represents in the real world. So the t-intercepts would be where y is 0. So we can again do second calc 0. Right, rather than setting that thing equal to 0 and doing the quadratic formula. Like, you can do all that, but it's easier to just go second calc 0. Left bound, this is a little bit tricky because I can't see the cursor very well, but I can see the coordinates, and if I'm looking at the coordinates, I'll know if I'm left of the 0 or not, because y is still positive, and then there's y negative. So enter, and then right bound, enter, and then guess. You can just hit enter again. So one time is negative 0.096. What does that represent in the real world? Nothing is a good answer, right? Like, that's 0.09 seconds before you kick the ball. That doesn't really make sense. That has no meaning. What's the meaning of the other one going to be?
When the ball, how much time has passed when the ball is hits the ground?
Good. How much time has passed when the ball hits the ground? So left bound, right bound, guess. Left bound, right bound, guess. 2.596 seconds when the ball hits the ground. Or you could be fancy and say like the hang time of the ball.
On this calculator, it just rounds it out, so I just did 2.6.
Okay. Yes. There's a fix for that. First period figured it out. I don't know what the fix is. If you're using an Inspire, it rounds it to 1, and I want it in 3. There was a setting somewhere where it would give you the 3 decimals. I don't know where that setting is, but somebody found it. Giant?
What if there's like, so like, I know you like kind of like want like mostly exact answers, but like, what if the calculators like have like rounding issues or like do like differently with setting?
So your calculator is going to be right to 3 decimal places. So it's fine. You're going to be okay. Where people get into trouble with that is if they don't remember the second calc 0 and they just go trace and they're like, okay, I'll just get my cursor close to it. And you're like, okay, that's close to 0, so I'll answer 2.57. You're like, well, no, that's not y equals 0. You've got to get y equals 0. Ella, did you figure out how to get that third decimal in there? I'll come look in a minute, but I don't know the Inspires very well. Okay, that's it for the EVENS of the calculator review. Would you like me to go ahead and do 39 since we have time left and it looks like another long calculator problem? Okay, that's fine. I can do that. I'll just leave it on the video. A model rocket is launched straight up. The rocket was 160 at 1 second, 2 seconds it was 287, 3 seconds it's 382. And I know this is going into the calculator, but it helps me organize my information if I will take the time to write out the table on my own here. Now, again, you may go straight to the calculator with that information, but I think it's worth it to write it out. So there's the coefficients. Type that in. There's the graph, but that window is the window we used for 38, which was a punt, as opposed to a rocket. So obviously a different scale needs to be used here. This goes way off the scale. I have no idea what a good X max would be. That looked pretty steep, so 20? I don't know. Y max? I was already at 50, so 500? I'm just guessing. Picking a window is a bit of a guess. Hey, that was a pretty good guess. Or the max was a good guess. The X, I could shorten that up a little bit, but I can see it, so I may just be like, yeah, it's fine. If you want to see more stuff below the axis, I might change that. I don't care what's happening below the axis, but below the axis is where it starts typing the answers when I do stuff in the calculator. So sometimes people like a little more room down there to see, when they get answers, they can still see the full graph. Okay, how high was it when it was launched? How'd you know that? That last number is H0, or you could say Y of 0. Plug in 0, you get 1. So 1 foot high. How are you going to figure out how high it was after 5 seconds? Plug in 5. And plug in 5 is right, but there's like 4 different ways to plug in 5. So tell me how you want to plug in 5. Trace? Yeah. If you trace, you got to be careful because it won't necessarily land exactly at 5. That's the trouble with trace. Right? It doesn't land at 5. You can do second calc value and just plug in 5. So 476. 5's a nice integer, so I bet it's on the table. 476. You could manually plug it in. -16 times 5 squared plus 175 times 5 plus 1. That's kind of annoying, but it gets you there. I also want to remind you that your calculator understands function notation. So you can tell it to literally do, hey, give me y1 of 5. And it will plug in 5 for you. So I think there's 4 different ways to get there. But however you get there, 476 feet. What is the maximum height of the rocket? What would I be looking for if I want the maximum height? The vertex. Which coordinate of the vertex?
I did y equals 5.
Y coordinate of the vertex. So, is there a way that I could find the vertex? Second calc. Oh, maximum. Or you could do it -b over 2a and then plug it in, but you've got a calculator, use it.
It's Wednesday, Mustang. Please stand for the pledges.
Left-bound, right-bound. Yes. Alright, so the rest is fairly easy. That last one, though, you got to put y equals 300 in and then do second calc intersect and define the 2 intersections.
Wait, how do you